Hey everybody, it's Colin Mattoon, the Ministry Director for Good News Clubs of Southern Nevada, here with another Coach's Corner for you. This week we are in Lesson 3 in our unit on the book of Daniel. So today is the fiery furnace. It's a great lesson. I'm excited for you to be able to dive into that with your kids. So I just want to walk through this lesson with you as you're trying to prepare it. Again, in this unit, things are a little bit different. There's not a clear 5 links laid out for you to follow: sin, God, solution, gospel, invitation, and growth step. The first 3 are combined, so you can follow that in the book as written if you want, but I just wanted to show you what I am doing as I teach that, so that you see an alternative and a clear way to break sin and God into its own concepts in this lesson that come out in a really natural, easy way. So as you look through and prepare this lesson, again, you want to be looking for what are the 5 icons, where are they at? And again, like I said, they're not all there in this unit, but I'm going to help you here in a minute. You're also going to want to look at the pictures though, right? In the flip book, you've got those 6 pictures for this lesson, or you've got those PowerPoint slides that you can rely on as well. The introduction in the book, it gets into peer pressure, and I think it's a great introduction. I would encourage you to use that. Incorporate your own story. Maybe you had a time as a kid when you felt really pressured and you did the wrong thing or the right thing. It's a great opportunity to bring that up and to have them identify with you as a person, and then for you to be able to link that into the story. Peer pressure is a great way to jump into this today. So that's how I'd open it, with the introduction that's there in the book. And then I would read through verse 1 in the Bible. You're starting with the Bible. It's always a good thing to do in a lesson if there's a simple, easy way to do it. That's what I do in my video Bible lesson, which you can watch as a demonstration. Right off the bat, you're getting into what is a cubit and all that. So just as a way of reference, the height of this statue is 90 feet tall. The width of this statue is 10 feet tall. So 9-story building is how tall this thing is. But I think spend a little bit of time and explain that. But then really what you want to do is explain the concept of idolatry. Right? So if you go back to Exodus chapter 20, that's where God gives the 10 commandments. And the second one is don't worship idols. Don't worship anything other than God. An idol could be wood, it could be stone, it could be some desire that we have, it can even be ourselves. There are all kinds of idols that people are tempted to worship. Keep it simple. Don't get too in-depth and lost in that concept. You want to keep moving with the story. But it is helpful to explain to them the reason why God hates when we worship idols is because he wants us to worship him, because he alone is holy and perfect and worthy of worship. That's simple. All right, so when you're there in the first picture, it's that statue, explain those concepts. Then you move into the second one, which is for verses 3 to 7. That's where the crowd gathers and they are told to worship. So there, it's a good spot to read verses 4 to 6. And that's where I think is a really clear place to bring in the link of idolatry is sin. That's your sin icon that you're putting in there. So explain the concept of sin. Worshiping an idol is sin. And many of those people were worshiping an idol and giving into sin. They were giving into that peer pressure. And we sometimes have given into sin. And we've done things because we felt pressured by other people or because we just did the wrong thing. Right? And so it's an easy link into sin. It's an easy link to God out of that as well, to say, God doesn't want us to give into this sin, whether it's idolatry or something else. God wants us to worship him alone because he is the only one who's good and perfect and holy, and you get into the attributes of God there with whichever ones you want to highlight. But you talk about God's perfection and God's greatness, that he alone is worthy of worship. Then you look at the third picture that you're going to have there. You got the 3 guys standing up, refusing to worship the idol, and they're taken to the king. Then you get into the 4th picture where the king says, I'm going to give you one more chance. You can read verses 15 to 18 there if you want to. I do in my demonstration. And then what happens? They refuse and they're thrown into the fire. Now you can use the slide. You could also decide at that point, if you've got enough volunteers, to cut away and maybe do puppets I don't know what your capabilities are there. You could take some orange and yellow and red paper and cut them with, chevron style with some arches and tape them on the wall so it looks like flames, and then hold up puppets in front. You can just use the pictures. It's whatever you want to do. I think that's a good place where you can do sort of an object lesson there that breaks the flow up. It seems fun for the kids. I did it in mine by turning on a TV and putting on YouTube, and I turn on one of those fireplace shows, the ones that people watch at Christmas and all that. But just showed a fireplace, and then I used some little people toys that my kids had. Do something like that to break it up if you want to. No pressure, but it's a good place for you to be able to do something like that. And then what do you get to? You've got the gospel right there. So in that point, as you're getting through the fourth picture, I think, man, this is such an obvious place to lay out the gospel to kids. Because what's happening? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego explicitly say in the passage that they're trusting in God. They don't know if they're going to live or die, right? They say, maybe he'll save us from the fire, but if not, we're not going to worship you. We're going to trust in our God. They're trusting that God will save them from death. And so that's the obvious link to the gospel. We need to trust that God made a way for us to be saved from death. Jesus came to save us. Walk through the gospel. So then you get to number 5, picture number 5, and that's where the king is looking in. He sees 4 men, they're unharmed. One of them looks like a son of God. He calls them out of the fire. Then in picture 6, everybody gathers around to see them. They're unharmed, they're unburnt. That's where I would read verses 28 to 30. That's a great passage for you to read because it's there. The king is explicitly becoming, he's worshiping God, honoring God. And that's where you want to end. And I think, so then your invitation and your growth step come out of that, right? The invitation then is a strong link where, hey, this king gives God praise. He comes to know that there is a one true God and that we should praise him. And that's what you need to do too, kids. We want to be like that king in that way and worship God as king. And then for the growth step, the obvious thing is, hey, we need to be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego here and trust in God, to trust that he has made a way for us to be delivered, and that is through our one perfect King, Jesus. And there, the growth step is trusting in God, asking him for the courage to obey, and trusting him to take care of you in this life and in death. So anyway, that's how I approach the lesson. I hope that's a help to you as well. So then as far as the rest of our lesson goes, when you get into the memory verse, finally, my brothers, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might, I want to encourage you to think about using 2 different strategies for this as a way for them to act out this thing, to give them activities to do. One of them would be to let them learn moves, strength of his might, things like that. Put in some moves, and your kids, how much movement they need. Maybe they only need 2 moves to be able to memorize this. But then after you give them the teaching as you're walking through iPair, when you get to R with repetition, what you want to do is you're giving them the opportunity to repeat this. You could have them do it where they're all playing a game where the rest of the kids have to guess what they're using the power and might to lift. You could do that. You could do the replacement word game that I do with my kids, and they love it. It's funny, it's silly, especially when they start getting bored. I pull this thing out because they love it. So what would that look like? Finally, my brothers, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his pizza, right? You just add in a different word and you let them correct you. Then they have to say it the right way. Then they get a term where they get to say it a silly way. And then you have them say it the right way again, right? So you're reinforcing, but it's fun, it's funny, and it can go quick. They love it. So that's one idea for you with that. If you look in the Wonder Time section, which is on page 36, it gets into how to respond to persecution. I want to encourage you, whether you're going to follow this Wonder Time teaching or you're just going to try and make it a quicker prayer, I would encourage you to do 2 things. 1, pray about persecution specifically. And then secondly, leave some discussion time for the kids. Ask them, hey, have you ever felt persecution? Have you ever felt picked on? Have you ever felt pressured about following Jesus, pressure to do the wrong things? Have you ever felt attacked or like other people made fun of you for doing the wrong thing? Put it in their terms, obviously, at whatever developmental appropriate point they're at. But I would encourage you, leave a little bit of time for discussion with them about that point and for them to ask questions. Some of them may have never realized before that persecution happens. You want to have some time to discuss that and explain it to them. So friends, I hope that's an encouragement to you today as you're preparing this next lesson in the book of Daniel. I hope this unit is a blessing to you. I know it's a blessing to me. I know it can seem a little bit intimidating going to those books in the middle of the Old Testament, but man, this is such a great book and it's so relevant to our lives. So as you're preparing and you're wrestling through this for yourself, praying through it for yourself, don't be afraid to let the kids see that. Help them to be able to see you are a real person and a real Christian who deals with real life situations like this too. Peer pressure, feeling pressure to do the wrong thing, struggling to need courage to obey God, all those kinds of things. So hope you have a great week. Thanks so much. God bless you. We'll catch you next week.